In this video, we're going to take a look at how to prepare an exported mastering score file for a merge into the Moodle gradebook so that the Moodle gradebook is up to date. I can't use I've created dummy files for this. I can't use actual files because they have confidential information, so I've made a couple of dummy files. One of these is a dummy class roster, which I would have exported from self-service. How to do that is explained in another video. And the other file is a dummy file that I would have exported from mastering, containing all of the student scores up to this point in the semester. So I'm going to open these both up. There's my class roster, and here is my mastering scores. Now, the point of this preparation is to make sure that the email addresses in the mastering score file are in the same order as those in the class roster. Because later, when you do the merge into the Moodle gradebook, the system is going to map the email addresses to each other to make sure that the scores are assigned to the correct student. If the email addresses aren't in the right order, then some students will end up being assigned the incorrect scores, and you obviously don't want that. So this is a pretty important step. So what I'm going to do is copy the email addresses from the course roster file and temporarily paste them in the column next to the email addresses in mastering. And then I'm going to compare and see if they're in the same order. And already I can see that they're not. I've got one email address up at the top here that appears down at the bottom here. And the reason for this is this particular student has registered under two different names. And this happens sometimes when a student has recently been married or divorced. This happens more often than you might think. So we've got her as Rosalind Smith in the mastering system, because remember, this is the file that we exported from mastering. But if we find that same email address in the roster that I exported from self-service, that's R. Carter at Hawkmail, I find that is associated with someone named Rosalind Carter. And that means that most likely that student is registered at Henry Ford under under Carter, and is signed up on mastering under Smith. This can happen when a student forgets that they used their previous last name when they registered as a student at Henry Ford, and then goes and uses their more updated last name when they sign up in mastering. So what we're going to do to fix this discrepancy is we're going to go over to the class roster file that was exported from self-service, and we're going to move Rosalind Carter down into the same position she's in the mastering score file. In this case, it's at the bottom of the list, and then we can just delete that empty row. And if we compare, now, Rosalind Carter is no longer in alphabetical order on my roster file here, but that doesn't matter, because what's important is that the email addresses are in the same order, which they are. R. Carter is now at the bottom of the list in both files, so the scores will be mapped to the correct students. So once the email addresses are all in the right order, it's a good idea to save your class roster to your hard drive so that you don't have to do this every time you do a merge. At the beginning of the semester, when students are still adding and dropping for about the first week or so, you'll have to go in from time to time and update it with new students, remove old ones, and so forth. But the roster will stabilize shortly after the semester begins. So these two files are ready, this mastering score file is ready to merge, and that will be explained in another video. Just as a side note, it would be very nice if we could simply have the Moodle system use student names to map scores, but the problem with that is students often sign up for mastering using, even if their last name is the same as it is in the Henry Ford system, they often use a different first name, usually a nickname. So for example, on my HFC roster, I've got Charles Lyell and William Shakespeare. But these two students, when they signed up on mastering, gave their first names as Charlie and Bill. So the system would not be able to match those up because the first names are different. So we have to use email addresses because those never change. Another quick note about email addresses: it's very important that your students use only their HFC Hawkmail addresses when signing up on mastering. They should not use any other email address, and this is the reason why. We want to make sure that the email addresses in mastering match the ones in the HFC system so that we can do this merge seamlessly without scores getting assigned to the wrong students. So now that we've got our emails in the correct order, our mastering score file is ready for import.